Welcome back to Super Tuesday Recap. This is your host, Chris and Deepom here, and we are here to review Season 3, Episode 7, Legend of Tomorrow. Welcome to the jungle. The team races to trace a new anachronism to the jungles of Vietnam. Roy and Nate bump into somebody from Roy's past. Hey, you know what I got to say about this? I've been kind of liking what they've been doing this season with all these shows. They found ways to make it so that they can have episodes that don't focus on or aren't really about their leads. And
right, you kind of let the rest of the cast shine.
And because the rest of the cast is solid enough and the stories are solid enough, you can do that. So in this episode, because we talked about this last week, we were like, oh man, Damien Dark had Sarah in a coma. Well, she'll be back up for next week because, I mean, it's Grodd and it's Sarah, and you can't have Sarah down too long. Wrong. Wrong.
Really wrong. Left her on the shelf the entire episode.
Yeah, and but what works is you get to see one, that the team is strong enough that they can work without her, and two, that they worked because they were afraid of what would have happened if they didn't do anything. Because I love that, because Jax was like, yeah, I do know if she wakes up and we're all sitting on our asses right now, she's gonna be pissed. So we need to find an anachronism and work on that. I will say, Jax, next time, pick a lower anachronism.
Well, we'll get to this later when we talk about some of the larger mythos, but the random idea of just picking an anachronism and what turned out to happen makes me wonder, like, we're going to talk about it later, but that's not good. It doesn't reflect well that they picked a random one and ran into Mick's dad. Oh,
well, so, again, we'll talk about this later, but I think it was Nate that finally brought up the fact that, hey, wait a minute, how are we always running into people or ourselves when we do this? What are the chances?
Yeah. I think I figured out why you hated Nate. They kept taking him to places where there's not good historical record. When they go to Vietnam, I'm like, oh, that's why Nate's here.
Right. You got, you're here for that reason. Okay.
You're here because you actually know this shit. Never mind.
You're a librarian. That's what it. Okay. Forgot. I couldn't figure out what it is. Cause you know what it is? Because like when he's not doing librarian shit, they want him to be the muscle. But then he's not really the muscle anymore either. So it's like, hey, bro, what are you here for? What is your job here again? He's Milton in office. You know. Well, no, I make sure that the consultants and I moved that.
I think he had a really good. They used him well in this episode.
No, they did.
Both as the info dump on history, but also as the emotional fulcrum for what they did with Mick.
Yeah. And I gotta say, again, what they did with Mick. First
Dominic of all, Purcell, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, that and the fact that Evan Jones makes sense as young Mick's dad, because they just nailed like from the fucking grunting, the looking at each other they did, and there's
it on cue.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was it. You're like, okay, that makes sense. But beyond that, just the whole storyline with Mick, because I think that Mick is a character, and I think I mentioned this before, how they've done a good job. They've done a good job, I think, every season, kind of going into Mick's character quietly and showing us some growth and moving him around here. And it makes sense because we've kind of forgotten, because for a while now, Mick's kind of been like the comic relief, and this episode kind of reminded you that Mick is not only just crazy, he's also damaged.
He's a really damaged guy.
He's a really damaged guy.
I remember when they introduced him in The Flash, you and I were surprised that they went full comic book with his origin, because his origin's pretty fucking dark.
Yeah. Very, very fucking dark. And so they reminded us of that in this episode when, Nate's all like, oh, whoa, no, it's your dad. It's fine. It's okay. You got to have your, I burned him alive. And I enjoyed it.
How about Mick just idly burning himself?
Oh, dude. Again, you know what it is? It's something we haven't seen in a long time. And we forget that in that first season, before Leonard sacrificed himself, Leonard was the one that kept Mick in check. It was always about Mick. Mick, He's the one that made sure Mick didn't go off the deep end. Now, when Mick came back as Kronos and they kind of messed with his mind, things like that, Mick kind of got a little bit better and okay, but he's kind of always been that person on the outside, and you kind of didn't think anything about it. But this episode, you see that he's still fucked up. From the minute that he said he didn't want to go to Vietnam, and then, again, it's going to happen. It's like, oh, no, come on, Mick. In all of Vietnam, you're not going to run into your dad here. What are the chances? What are the odds? And, of course, he runs into his dad. But then you see why. It's like, you see that his father was damaged from what he saw in war. And because that wasn't the purpose of the episode, it's not the purpose of the show, they didn't get too far into it. But you can see, it's like, hey, listen, his father basically suffered from PTSD from what he saw in there. And that went down to how he interacted with his family, and particularly his son, and that caused a toxic relationship that ended up leading to his son burning him alive and enjoying watching him burn to death. You know? And it's
not
just
great.
It's not great at all. Like, that's the one thing when Nate kept going, oh no, we're gonna have what did he say? He said, you have daddy issues, we're gonna work them out. And I'm like, I don't think you understand.
Yeah.
Mick's daddy issues.
His daddy issues aren't, I didn't get enough hugs.
Was it season 1 it was season 1, right? When we watched him as a kid sitting on the hill, watch the house burn down, right?
Right.
Because they were going to.
And that's the thing. We'll talk about it later. Actually,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because they had to go back and find their old selves, and Mick's the one that had to go and I think went to find himself, and his younger self is sitting on the hill, watching the house burn down. It's just So, but I thought that was really, really great how they did that, how they stuck that into this episode. Because again, it's one of the things that got kind of serious. But this is a show that's, not really built on it being serious. So I like how they did that. I like what they did. Like, I'm interested in seeing what they're going to do with Jax once Stein's gone. Like, do you think they're going to work with the Matrix so that he can bond by himself, or do you think they're setting him up so that he can be on the team without keeping his powers?
I honestly think they're writing Firestorm off the show.
Yeah,
which is going to be interesting because part of them being together was that it was unstable if they weren't near each other.
Well, I think that's one of the things they were saying is that Stein can figure out a way to separate them, but he can't figure out a way to separate them and allow Jax to keep the power. And so this episode was, and so when Jax went out there to stop the president, President Johnson, from being blown up and all that stuff, his whole thing was, telling Stein, it's like, listen, I don't need my powers. I need to go out there and be able to do this without. And it kind of goes back to what Jax was saying when Sarah was in a coma. When he was talking to Sarah, he was like, listen, you don't have powers, and you're one of the strongest people I know. You're one of the strongest, bravest people I know, and that tells me that I don't need to have the power of Firestorm to be a hero. So I'm with you. I'm kind of leaning towards the idea that they're writing Firestorm out of the show, but not Jackson. Like, he's going to be around. Right. He's going to be around. He just won't have the Firestorm power. And I think that's fine, because I think that, if you think about it, while it's great to see Firestorm here and there, it's almost like, it's like a treat, because we normally don't get to see Firestorm anyway. Right. And so I don't think, like, I know some people might get upset by it, but we already get very limited Firestorm to begin with, guys. So I think that's fine. Like, Jackson has made a place for himself on the show where he's actually more useful as the mechanic, and the technician on the show, on the Wave Rider than that. So, and I'm pretty sure they'll find something to give him, something to do, so that he can be out in the field when they need him to be. But most times he's not Firestorm to begin with. So, like, does it really matter? I don't think it does. So we'll see. But I like how. I do like how they address that. They're like, hey, listen, you're not always going to have Stein there. You're not always going to have the powers. But you're still a hero. You've done all this stuff. So why not? And if you think about it, most of the significant moments outside of when, they turn the giant bomb into water, or they turn the giant bomb into Skittles, most of the most significant things with Jax Outside of those handful of parts, the most significant moments of Jax have always been with him by himself anyway. It's always just been him as Jax. Remember there's an episode when they went back in time and he freed the slaves. Like all his significant moments involve him just being Jax. So I think as a character, it's okay for him not to be Firestorm. So
yeah, but I think this team, particularly what looks like to be a counter team evolving, is going to need a big gun.
Mm-hmm. So
I don't know where they get it because Nate ain't doing it. I love Sarah. But, I mean, at a certain point, Sarah's just a woman.
Who came back from the dead. She's also a ninja, so ninja can do anything. But I hear what you're saying. I hear your point. You make a very
Firestorm trying to bomb in the Skittles.
I know.
That's a level of power you might like to have in that old back pocket.
I know. Well, we do know that Constantine at some point joins the show, but I think it's limited. But man, wouldn't that be great if you actually had Constantine actually join the team?
Man.
I'm just saying, like that. No, I mean, that could work. Still, it's not. You're not gonna. Here's the thing: you're not gonna get as big of a gun as Firestorm. He's a cheat code, so you gotta admit that there's that. First of all, so we're limited in what we can do here.
It's true.
So, but yeah, no, it'll be interesting seeing how they do that, or maybe they do something with Zari and Amaya.
Yeah, those are two big. I mean, that's a lot of power too.
Right. So maybe they're, and then maybe that's it. Maybe we're not getting fire. And again, the Firestorm thing might be temporary because Garber's leaving for Broadway, but he could be back next year. So for a limited run for something like that. So we'll see. I don't know. We'll see. They brought in every time they do Grodd, I feel like they get better at his graphics.
Can I be real about something?
Mm-hmm.
I watched the episode this morning, and I was working. I was watching the episode, and I don't know if I'd forgotten. Nigga, I forgot it was a Grodd episode. I cheered like, "Oh shit, Grodd!" Like I was like, "Yo, who could have taken over this town? Who's solving Vietnam? What's going on here? Oh shit, it's Grodd." Mm-hmm. Oh, it's Grodd. We good people. It was a very pleasant surprise.
Oh yeah. I kind of forgot too that we got the jungle. I was like, oh wait, this is not good. But no,
I completely forgot.
They get better with his graphics every time though. Like he looks really good, and you can see him. And just don't make the angry gorilla angry. Like he's just when he was. I am kind of shocked nobody made the Planet of the Apes joke when he said that he'll go back in time and he'll create a whole planet. A whole Grodd planet.
I was shocked, but I also thought, because I thought the same thing. I was like, that would have undercut the seriousness of this.
It would have, but at the same time.
And because, for what it's worth, this was a fairly serious episode of
it was.
A Legends. Our big gag was Stein bringing back famous scientists and the pecan pie thing.
Right. Yeah. No.
Everything else was fairly serious.
No, you're right. Because even the whole thing with Grodd and the people that taken over, it was basically this idea that hey. First of all, the Vietnamese woman, I can't remember what her name was. She was just like, no, we follow Grodd because he's bringing peace. I've lost my family. I've lost everybody here, This war taking everything from me. And it's like that moment that you get when Amaya sees that it's a war. She's like, oh, America's at war. We'll sign up. We'll go and do this. And Nate was like, actually, it's not the kind of war you're thinking of. You're thinking of the noble wars, quote unquote, that we used to get into. Vietnam was anything but that. And you can see it in her face as she's going around and seeing these things. You can see that, it's not as clean cut as she thought it was, because you tend to forget that Amaya is from the past.
Right.
And so anything after her time, anything basically, because their time was like what, World War II, I believe?
Yeah, World War II.
So anything after World War II is kind of new to her, and she doesn't really understand it. And so, to me, Vietnam was such a vastly different war and time period than World War II. And so for her to sit there and see everything that's going on, and then hearing, like, she was trying to connect to Grodd. It's like, listen, we can find you a place. We can take you back to. We understand that you're hurt. She was able to see what humans did to him, and you kind of understand that, you know, Grodd is a telepathic murdering fucking ape. And I know you guys always hear me say this, but he's not really wrong.
But that's why I wanted to bring up, like, the larger ethos of this episode being kind of serious, because Grodd's played, like, Grodd is terrible. Like, Ray's reaction to Grodd is logical and right. Mm-hmm. However, Zuri and Amaya recognizing that he was just a meta being tortured as well is also right. They added a layer of depth to Grodd, which is fine for this show. If he shows up on Flash, I need Super Gorilla Grodd. I don't need Grodd with feelings. I'm just saying that right now. But for this episode of this show, it really worked.
Like, when they were talking about where they were going to take Grodd, and they were like, well, to put him back, you know, where he came from, in an Argus cell. And Zari kind of like, wait a minute, Argus? Because you got to remember, Argus is different in her time than the Argus that they put him in the cell with. And she's kind of had to look on her face like, we better find something else to do. We're not going to put him in. I'm not going to put him back in Argus because I know what Argus does, and Argus was torturing metas in my time period. So that's not work. They even brought up the idea of, and it's so funny, we had just mentioned, I love the fact that this episode brought up so many things that we had brought up last episode as kind of, oh, that's kind of weird. Wonder if they're going to address that. The fact that she didn't drop off Helen back in Troy, and she actually instead dropped her off at Themyscira, and they kind of brought that. It was like, wait a minute, you can't do that. She had to show that, no, look, it didn't do anything. The war still happened. Everything's fine. We just didn't have to put her there. You know, it's okay. You know, and that's where they get the line of, you know, hey, Sarah wouldn't approve of that. Well, you know, who's going to tell her? And Jackson's like, well, I'll tell you one thing. She's not going to be happy if we're not doing any work. So, right. But you're right. It's like, I loved how, like you said, the entire episode is serious, from the mixed stuff to the stuff. Like, even down to the fact that his father was going to slaughter those people.
Yo.
like
he inadvertently may have just, like, saved his childhood.
That's the thing. That's something else.
We'll talk about that. Can we talk right now?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
So all these plans, all these machinations, all these things that are happening are directly affecting the Legends. Ray meets an alien. Stein's ancestors involved with Damien Dark. And now this. These are truly random anachronisms. They seem awfully targeted, but to what end?
So here's the thing. And I was thinking about this. Outside of the Stein one, particularly the Ray one and the Mick one, both Ray and Mick say something. Ray says something to his younger self. Mick says something to his father that technically could change who they are as people.
Is this what happens now? Is they go back to their present time and their presents are better? And Damien Dark says, "This is what I can do for people."
Either that, or they're never like. Here's the thing: if Mick's father goes home and is a better father to Mick, does Mick ever become Heatwave? Does he ever become the criminal that he is? Does he ever burn down the house? You erase yourself. I can't remember. I have to go back and watch it now, but I can't remember exactly what happened. What Ray says to his younger self, but Ray kind of says something to us. I want to say he does something that make it seem like to let his younger self know that he's not always going to be alone. He doesn't always be an outcast and things like that.
Basically gives him it gets better speech,
right? And who knows? I hate to say this, but if Ray not being picked on and not getting that speech changes who he is, and he goes down a different path than the super nerdy. Because remember, think about how Ray was when we first met him, and he kind of still is, right? Ray's this super nerdy misfit, doesn't really know how to interact with people correctly.
He's uncool Tony Stark.
Uncool Tony Stark. What happens if he grows up to be cool Tony Stark, though?
Right.
Does he ever become... So that's what I started thinking. I started thinking about, like, are all these things happening to kind of make it so that these people don't become who they were? Like, we even go to the Stein, like Stein's, what was it, like his great-great-grandfather, something like that? If he doesn't become, he's not some evil scientist type dude, does Stein become a scientist? Like, I'm starting to wonder if that's not what's happening here, and they're not getting the legends to interact with some form of their selves that basically ends up erasing them from the timeline. So I don't know, but it's kind of an interesting thing. We kind of know what Caden James is up to in Arrow. We don't know what his end game is, but we know about DeVoe and we know what he's doing. We have no fucking idea what Mollis is doing with. I mean, then this episode ends up with him. Again, we still do. Right now, we're doing everything with Mollis through Damien Dark now. So Damien Dark now is the one that saved Grodd, and Brett Grodd out was like, hey, listen, you want to go to any point in time? Here you go. Now you can do it just by thinking. Go out and have fun. Do your worst. So, Ike, what is the plan here? I have no idea. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like you said, they've seen that some of the anachronisms it's not random. It's a weird thing. Like what is really happening here? Even down to the idea that what is Amaya's role in this? What is Zari's role in this? Like they apparently play huge parts of this. So what's going on with that? Like they're clearly linked to it and now. Amaya, because that's one thing that was going on in this episode too. Everybody keeps bringing up, Amaya and the fact that hey, listen, your granddaughter turned into an evil water witch. It's
right.
like, how are you?
Maybe you just want to deal with that.
So how are you feeling about that? Like, what are you going to do about that? And she's like, oh well, maybe it's the whole thing with Grodd where she did this because of something that happened to her, and it's because of something that was done to her, not that this is how she always was, and so she has to be open up to that. But like none of this seems to be random. Like the fact that they have all these connections, what's going on here? So,
and you know what? Another thing I really liked about this episode was, and I know it's a pairing you're not a fan of, but I like that Amaya admitted to Ray that Ray and what's old buddy's name?
Nate
were right about what she was trying to cope with, but not to tell Nate. That tells me that story's not over, and I know you don't like them together, and a lot of people don't. But if you remember, the roots of them is that she was with his grandfather.
Yeah.
And he died, and I think that, like, I got back and started watching on season 1, and it made me appreciate.
Oh no, she wasn't. I was going to say that was weird. She wasn't. She was with what's his name? She wasn't with his.
Oh, you're right. She was Sandman.
It wasn't Sandman.
Who was it?
Not Dr. You know what? Not Dr. Fate. God damn it! It was shit. Why is it? I'll get it. But anyway, go ahead. I'll figure it out.
For me, what it meant was that both their interactions in the episode came with a heavy emotional cost.
Yes.
And so them bonding out of that, like that made more. It plays more for me now as you look at the two seasons together. And I did enjoy the fact that she recognized that both Ray and Nate had insight into her that she didn't have to herself. And I always like, I don't know, I played football. I'm a team sports guy. I like to see a team coming together, and that's something I really enjoyed. Like a little throwaway line. You're right, but I like the deftness with which they handled it.
It was Rex Tyler, our man. Sorry, I thought it was
Rex.
That's what it was. Yeah. No. So here's the thing, and I've gone to my Nate rant. The last few episodes, Nate has been better, and like you said, even in this episode, I feel like the Nate and Amaya things, it made more sense. It's like, you know what it is? He's not behaving like a 12-year-old. And I think that's what did it. Like the first two episodes, he was just annoying as fuck to me. He's been better these last two episodes, and so I'm like, oh, okay, it's fine.
I like, but you're right. I like how they're kind of like using him to. He's best when other people are playing off of him.
Yes.
And him being a foil for both Mick and Amaya in this episode emotionally, I think was probably the best usage of him this year.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, I think this is really, again, look, Legends is quietly, I think, one of the best shows that they have.
Because they don't take themselves too seriously, but they take themselves seriously enough.
Well, like you said, they know when to be serious. Like when like we can have these fun, crazy episodes, but then when we need to get, because if you think about it, the last episode was kind of serious too, especially when you think of the timing of everything else that's going around dealing with women, you know, in Hollywood and things like that. Like the timing of that episode was just like perfectly like. It almost feels like it almost, I know they didn't do this, but it almost feels like they moved the episode to be at that time to make sure it fits, but they didn't. But like it just worked. And this episode, like you said, it gets a little bit more. So and you have funny moments, like the whole thing with Jax and Johnson was actually kind of funny. That shit was kind of funny.
Oh yeah.
And then you know, and they did, and then they did all of it with Sarah out of commission.
Sarah on the shelf.
You know, until the very end when they were having.
I hope it wasn't a test run for her leaving the show because I will not abide that. But
don't. Why you gotta put that?
Okay.
Why you gotta put that in the universe, man? Like
Sorry.
that. Oh no, that. Oh yeah. Anyway, that's a blame. That's a blame T-Palm right there. Shit, man.
I just said don't do it. I'm hoping they don't. Like what?
Oh God, damn, dude. Just a downer, man. But no, you're absolutely right. Like I said, I've really enjoyed how they handle this, and like I said, it balances the getting serious and not. And yeah, they had a woman director for it. Awesome. This episode. So again, you know, the other thing too, and you know, with Agent Show coming back next week, thank God. We say this with Agent Show all the time, but I don't think we really. I know we have, I think, the last couple episodes particularly, but you really got to give Legend of Tomorrow credit for what they do with their female characters. I mean, this is a show.
They're the center of the show.
Yeah, I mean, they like, and if you really think about it, at this point, right now the main characters are all the women. It's going to be obviously Sarah and Damien Dark is going to be like somehow Sarah and Damien Dark has become way more interesting and way more of an ongoing thing than Oliver and Damien Dark. And he was introduced on Arrow. And again, it makes sense because, I mean, shit, Damien Dark killed her fucking sister. So, I mean, yeah. But then you got Zari and Amaya and whatever going on with them. So it's like, you know, you have a series. And again, this is one of the things that, you know, I wish more people would watch and give it a shot because it's like this is giving you everything you ask for. You want more women, you want diverse women, you want black women. You like this show is doing that right there, and it's doing it well. I mean, it's doing it smart. It gives you the pop culture references. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but I don't know. I feel like it's also it doesn't give them credit because I think they do. I think that they take themselves seriously and they know when to have fun, and they know they can get silly. But they, like I said before, they know when to be serious, and when they're serious, it fucking works, you know. So
yes, it does.
Really great. So anyway, folks, thank you guys very much for listening. Super Tuesday recap on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play Music. Leave us a 5-star review. So only gonna be 5-star review for us to read it on the air. You can email us at MTR Network. I mean at mtrailerreviews@mtrnetwork.net. Check out our YouTube page. We'll be having some. I know Agent Show reviews interviews coming out next week, and I'm working on a video series on how Warner Brothers fucked up the DCEU and how we got to where we're at now. So hopefully that'll be hopefully the first couple parts of that will come out next week as well. So make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. It's youtube.com/MTR Network. So again, folks, thank you very much, and enjoy your Thanksgiving. Till next time, we're out of here. Peace.